The carpet unrolls at your feet, and out of it tumbles the Queen of Egypt. Cleopatra, 21 years old, barely clothed, smelling of cedar oil and audacity. The most powerful man in the world stands 3 feet away, and he has just stopped breathing. Julius Caesar stares at the woman on the floor as if a goddess has materialized from the fabric itself. You are standing behind him holding a pitcher of wine, and your hands are shaking so badly the liquid trembles like a living thing. This is the moment everything changes. For Egypt, for Rome, for the ancient world, and for you, a servant girl who has spent her entire life in the shadow of a queen who cast the largest shadow in history. You can see it in Caesar's eyes, not just surprise, but hunger, the recognition of an equal intelligence burning behind a face more beautiful than any coin could capture. The conqueror has just been conquered. Cleopatra rises from the carpet, with a grace that makes the act of being smuggled into a palace look like a royal entrance. She speaks to Caesar in perfect Latin, and his eyebrows climb toward his laurel wreath. But before the carpet, and the Latin, and the night that will produce an heir to 2 civilizations, let's go back. Back to the day you first entered the palace and learned what it means to serve a woman the gods themselves seem afraid of. You are 12 years old, taken from your family's small home near the Canopic Gate and brought to the royal palace because your mother once served the old queen and your hands are steady enough to braid hair without pulling. That is your entire qualification for witnessing history. The Palace of the Ptolemies is a city within a city. Marble colonnades stretching toward the harbor, gardens so lush they seem to breathe, and a library that holds every thought humanity has ever committed to papyrus. You are terrified of every inch of it. They assign you to the Queen's private chambers, a suite of rooms overlooking the great harbor where the Pharos lighthouse throws its flame across the water every night. The light sweeps through the windows like a golden arm reaching into your room. Cleopatra is 14 when you first meet her, already fluent in 9 languages, already studying mathematics with the scholars of the Mauseon, already more dangerous than any of the men who think they control her. She looks at you on your first day with eyes painted in malachite and kohl, and she doesn't ask your name. She asks if you can keep a secret. You nod, and she smiles, and that smile will own you for the rest of your life. Your duties are intimate and endless, drawing her baths in water scented with rose oil and milk of donkeys, braiding her dark hair into the elaborate styles that take 2 hours and must survive a full day of politics. You learn to make your fingers invisible. She bathes every morning before dawn, and you pour the water while she dictates letters to scribes waiting outside the door. Her mind works even when her body is submerged, and you learn quickly that she is never not thinking. You dress her in linen so fine it's nearly transparent, layer it with gold, fasten the uraeus cobra to her brow, and hand her the crook and flail of pharaonic authority. Every morning you build a goddess out of a girl, and every morning the transformation astonishes you. She speaks to you in Egyptian, the language of the common people, the language her Ptolemaic ancestors never bothered to learn. She is the first Ptolemy in 300 years to speak the tongue of her own kingdom, and the people love her for it. You accompany her to the temple of Isis, where she performs the rites as the living incarnation of the goddess. The priests bow, the incense rises, and for a moment, standing behind her in the dim sanctuary, you believe she actually is divine. But you also see the other side. The night she paces her chambers unable to sleep, reading reports from the border provinces, calculating grain harvests, counting the loyalty of generals on her fingers. The crown weighs more than gold. Her father, Ptolemy XII Auletes, was a weak king who bought his throne with Roman money and died leaving Egypt in debt and his children at each other's throats. Cleopatra inherited a kingdom that was already burning. Her younger brother, Ptolemy XIII, is 13 years old and technically her co-ruler and husband, a boy controlled by eunuchs and advisors who see Cleopatra as an obstacle to their own power. The marriage is political, the hatred is personal. You watch the court politics like a mouse watching cats. the whispered alliances, the poisoned compliments, the way certain advisors look at the queen when her back is turned. You learn to read danger in the way a man holds his wine cup. Pothinus, the chief eunuch and the power behind her brother's throne, watches Cleopatra with eyes that calculate her death like an accountant calculating a debt. You hate him with every fiber of your servant's heart. Theodotus, the rhetoric teacher, and Achilles, the general, these are the three men who control her brother and who will stop at nothing to remove her from power. The palace is not a home. It is a battlefield where the weapons are whispers. The crisis comes in 48 BC, when Cleopatra is 21 and her brother's advisors have finally gathered enough support to drive her from Alexandria. You pack her belongings in the dark while soldiers loyal to Ptolemy surround the palace. She doesn't cry. You've never seen her cry, but her jaw is set so tight you can see the muscles working beneath the skin. "We are not finished," she says to no one in particular, and you believe her. You flee east with a small retinue, handmaidens, guards, scribes, and the queen herself, riding through the desert toward the Syrian border. The sand gets into everything, your food, your clothes, your dreams. In the border town of Ashkelon, Cleopatra sets up a court in exile that would be laughable if it weren't so fierce. She begins raising an army from Bedouin tribes and Syrian mercenaries, trading on charm, promises, and the name Ptolemy. You sleep on the ground for the first time in your life, and the stars above the desert are so thick they look like spilled milk. Cleopatra sits beside you one night and names the constellations in Greek, then Egyptian, then Aramaic, as if the sky speaks different languages depending on who's listening. Months pass in the desert, months of heat, dust, negotiations, and the slow assembly of a fighting force that might, if the gods are generous, be enough to retake Alexandria. You grow thin and brown and harder than you've ever been. Then the news arrives that changes everything. A messenger on a lathered horse, carrying word that the Roman civil war has spilled onto Egyptian soil. Pompey the Great, fleeing Julius Caesar after the Battle of Pharsalus, has sailed to Egypt seeking refuge. Cleopatra's eyes narrow when she hears this. Rome's war is Egypt's opportunity, and she sees it instantly. The chess moved 3 turns ahead that no one else can see. Then worse news follows. Ptolemy's advisors have murdered Pompey on the beach at Pelusium, cutting off his head and presenting it to Caesar as a gift when the Roman general arrives. The act was meant to win favor, but it was a catastrophic miscalculation. You see Cleopatra receive this news, and for the first time, you see something like excitement in her face. Not at the murder, but at the opportunity. "They've given us Caesar," she says, and her voice is almost musical. Caesar, she explains to you that night while you unbraid her hair, is not a man who respects cowardice disguised as loyalty. The murder of Pompey, a Roman consul, Caesar's own former son-in-law, will disgust him, not please him. Ptolemy's advisors have shown Caesar what kind of men they are, she says, turning to face you with those painted eyes. Now I need to show him what kind of woman I am. The plan forms quickly. She cannot approach Caesar openly because her brother's forces control the roads and harbors around Alexandria. Any official embassy would be intercepted, arrested, or killed. So she devises something so audacious it borders on madness. She will have herself smuggled into the royal palace, past her brother's guards, past the Roman legionaries, and into Caesar's private chambers. In a carpet. You stare at her when she explains this, waiting for the jest, but her face is perfectly serious. Apollodorus will carry the carpet on his back, she says. You will be waiting inside with wine and everything I need to dress. Apollodorus is a Sicilian merchant loyal to Cleopatra, a massive man with arms like ship's rope who treats the queen with the devotion of a temple priest. He agrees without hesitation, as if smuggling a queen into an occupied palace is a normal evening's work. You spend 2 days preparing, assembling her cosmetics, her finest linen, her golden jewelry, the sacred uraeus, everything needed to transform a woman who's been living in a tent into the Queen of Egypt. The carpet is selected for its size and beauty. Cleopatra fasts the day before, bathes in whatever clean water you can find, and has you oil her skin until it gleams. She rehearses what she'll say to Caesar in Latin, then Greek, adjusting words like a jeweler setting stones. The night before the plan, you lie awake listening to the desert wind, and you realize that if this fails, you will both die. Cleopatra executed by her brother's men, and you killed as a matter of housekeeping. The stakes are absolute. She finds you awake and sits beside you, and for a moment she is not a queen, but a girl your own age, frightened and brilliant and utterly alone in a world that wants to consume her. "Are you afraid?" she asks. "Yes," you tell her, "because she taught you never to lie." She nods and takes your hand, and you sit together in the darkness while the desert breathes around you. "Good," she says finally. "Fear means you understand what's happening. The fools are the ones who aren't afraid." Dawn comes, and you pack the cosmetics into a small chest that Apollodorus will carry separately. The carpet is rolled, the queen is sealed inside, and you watch the Sicilian hoist it onto his massive shoulders and walk toward a small boat that will cross the harbor under cover of night. History rides on the back of a merchant. You enter the palace through the servants' entrance, a route you know from years of living here, through the kitchens, past the storage rooms, into the back corridors that the guards rarely patrol. Your heart beats so loudly you're certain the walls can hear it. You carry the cosmetics chest on your hip like a laundress carrying linens, and no one looks at you twice. Servants are invisible here, which is exactly what Cleopatra counted on. You are the most important, invisible person in Alexandria tonight. You reach the chamber assigned to Caesar, a suite in the royal wing that was once Cleopatra's own, and you arrange everything with trembling hands. Wine, cups, oil lamps, the cosmetics laid out in the order you've practiced 1,000 times. Then you wait. The minutes stretch like hours, and every sound in the corridor makes your stomach clench. Footsteps, voices, the distant clang of Roman armor. If Apollodorus is caught, if the carpet is unrolled at the wrong moment, everything ends tonight. You hear him before you see him, the heavy footsteps of a large man carrying something awkward, followed by the murmur of a Roman guard questioning him. Apollodorus's voice, cheerful and casual, explaining that he's delivering a gift for the general. The door opens, and Apollodorus enters with the carpet on his shoulder, sweat pouring down his face. Behind him, a Roman centurion peers in suspiciously, sees a servant girl and a merchant with a rug, and closes the door. Apollodorus sets the carpet down and unrolls it with a theatrical flourish he's clearly been rehearsing. Cleopatra tumbles out, flushed, breathless, her hair wild, her linen wrinkled, and for one terrible second, she looks not like a queen, but like a woman who's just been smuggled in a rug. "Quickly," she says, and you move, years of training condensing into this single moment. You hand her the wet cloth to wipe her face, the oil for her skin, the kohl for her eyes, the gold for her throat. Your fingers braid her hair faster than they've ever moved, weaving gold thread into the dark strands while she adjusts her linen and pins the uraeus to her brow. 5 minutes. You transform her in 5 minutes from a fugitive to a pharaoh. She checks her reflection in a polished bronze mirror and adjusts a single strand of hair. "Wine," she says, and you pour it. The good wine, the Falernian that Caesar's own supplies provided, sweet irony in a cup. Apollodorus leaves silently, his work done, and you retreat to the shadows near the wall where a servant belongs. Cleopatra arranges herself on a couch with the precision of a general positioning troops, and then she waits. When the door opens and Julius Caesar walks in, you see the most powerful man in the ancient world stop in his tracks. He is 52 years old, balding, lean as a sword, and his eyes, you will never forget his eyes. They see everything. He looks at Cleopatra, then at you, then back at Cleopatra, and you watch the gears of his legendary mind process what he's seeing. A queen, exiled and hunted, has appeared in his private chamber through sheer force of will. Cleopatra stands, slowly, deliberately, the way she moves in the temple of Isis, and speaks her first words to Caesar in flawless Latin. You don't understand all of it, but you understand the effect it has. Caesar's expression shifts from surprise to amusement to something deeper, something that looks like respect wearing the mask of desire. He has conquered nations, but this woman has just conquered the physical space around her. He dismisses his guards with a wave, and the door closes, and you are suddenly alone in the room with the Queen of Egypt and the dictator of Rome. The wine pitcher in your hands has never felt so heavy. They talk for hours, not just flirtation, but real conversation, the kind that moves between politics and philosophy and personal history like a river finding its channels. Cleopatra matches him reference for reference, joke for joke. She tells him about Egypt, its history, its wealth, its strategic importance to Rome, the grain that feeds his legions. She presents herself not as a supplicant, but as a partner, an ally whose intelligence is as valuable as her kingdom's resources. Caesar drinks the wine you pour and watches her the way a scholar watches an experiment. You can see him recalculating everything he thought he knew about Egypt, about women, about power. At some point, you're not sure when, the conversation shifts from political to personal, and the air in the room changes temperature. You refill the wine cups and retreat further into the shadows, making yourself as small as possible. Cleopatra laughs at something Caesar says, and the sound is genuine. Not the practiced laugh of a diplomat, but the real laugh of a woman who has found someone she doesn't have to perform for. It's a sound you've rarely heard. Caesar tells her about Pompey's head, how Ptolemy's advisors presented it to him on the beach, preserved in salt, and how he wept at the sight of his former friend and son-in-law reduced to a trophy. Cleopatra listens without flinching. Your brother's advisors are not just cruel, Caesar says, and you catch these words because he speaks them slowly. They are stupid. Cruelty can be useful, stupidity cannot. Cleopatra nods, and in that nod is a treaty, an alliance, and the beginning of a love affair that will reshape the Mediterranean world. Two civilizations agree to merge over a cup of wine poured by your invisible hands. The night deepens, and Caesar orders his guards to bring food, roasted fowl, bread, figs, and honey. You serve it on Cleopatra's own plates, the irony of serving an Egyptian queen from her own kitchen not lost on anyone. She eats sparingly. She always does, watching Caesar tear into his food with the appetite of a soldier. The contrast between his Roman directness and her Egyptian elegance creates a tension that is almost visible in the lamplight. At some point, Caesar asks about you, why a queen would bring a handmaiden into a room where secrets are being traded. Cleopatra answers without hesitation, because she has been keeping my secret since before I was queen. Caesar looks at you directly for the first time, and the weight of his gaze is like being struck by a wave. He nods once, acknowledging your existence and your purpose, and returns his attention to Cleopatra. You have just been seen and approved by the most dangerous man alive. The oil lamps burn low, and you replace them without being asked. The conversation has grown softer now, more intimate, and you know that your presence will soon become an intrusion. Cleopatra catches your eye and gives you the smallest nod, the signal you've developed over years, the one that means go. You set down the wine pitcher, bow once, and back out of the room that has just changed the course of history. The corridor outside is dark and cool, and you lean against the wall and breathe, really breathe, for the first time in hours. Your hands are still trembling, and the muscles in your shoulders ache from the tension. You realize you need to move, A servant caught lingering outside Caesar's chambers at this hour will attract attention. You walk the familiar hallways of the palace you grew up in, now occupied by Roman soldiers who look at you with bored suspicion. The kitchens are still active. Palace kitchens never truly close, and a cook you've known for years gives you bread and water without asking questions. The normalcy of eating after what you've just witnessed feels obscene. You find a place to sleep in the servants' quarters, your old room, still there, still the same narrow cot against the stone wall. You lie down and stare at the ceiling, listening to the distant sound of the harbor and the nearer sound of Roman boots on marble. Sleep comes in fragments, broken by dreams of carpets unrolling, of Caesar's eyes, of Cleopatra's laugh. You wake before dawn, because your body doesn't know how to sleep past the hour when the queen's bath must be drawn. The morning changes everything. By sunrise, the palace knows. Servants whisper, guards exchange glances, and Pothinus' face when he learns that Cleopatra is inside the palace and under Caesar's protection is something you wish you could preserve in amber. Caesar summons Ptolemy XIII to the palace and presents him with a fait accompli. His sister is here, she is under Roman protection, and he will arbitrate the dispute between them. The boy king's advisors stand behind him, radiating fury. You dress Cleopatra for the meeting with her brother. Full pharaonic regalia, the double crown of Upper and Lower Egypt, gold at her throat and wrists, kohl wings extending past her temples. She must look like what she is, the rightful ruler. You stand behind her in the throne room as Caesar sits between the two siblings, a Roman judge presiding over an Egyptian succession. Ptolemy's face is red and wet with tears. Real or tactical, you can't tell. Cleopatra shows nothing. Her face is the face of Isis, serene and absolute, and you marvel at how the girl who held your hand in the desert has become this monument of composure. She has become the mask, and the mask has become her. Caesar rules in Cleopatra's favor. She will be restored as co-ruler, the original will of Ptolemy XII will be honored, and the advisors who engineered her exile will be dealt with. Pothinus stares at the floor, already calculating his next move. But it's not over. Pothinus and Achilles are already mobilizing the Egyptian army against Caesar's small force. War is coming to Alexandria, and the politics of the bedroom will now be settled on the battlefield. You spend the following weeks in a palace under siege. Roman legionaries fortify the royal quarter, while Egyptian troops loyal to Ptolemy surround the district. The harbor fills with warships, and smoke from burning buildings drifts across the water. Cleopatra remains calm through all of it. She meets with Caesar daily, shares intelligence about Egyptian troop movements, provides access to royal resources. She is not a damsel being rescued. She is a co-commander. During the Battle of the Harbor, you watch from the palace roof as fire ships launched by Caesar accidentally ignite the warehouses near the Great Library. The flames leap from building to building, and the smoke carries the smell of burning papyrus. You stand on that roof and watch centuries of knowledge turn to ash and embers, and you weep, not for politics, not for crowns, but for the scrolls, the thoughts, the accumulated genius of a civilization rising into the Egyptian sky as smoke. The war lasts months. Caesar receives reinforcements, defeats the Egyptian army at the Battle of the Nile, and Ptolemy XIII drowns in the river during the retreat, his golden armor dragging him to the bottom. The boy king dies as he lived, controlled by forces larger than himself. Cleopatra is restored to the throne, now paired with her even younger brother, Ptolemy XIV, as co-ruler. Another political marriage, another sibling she will outlast. The crown returns to her brow, and you are the one who places it there. Caesar stays in Egypt longer than any Roman general should. 2 months, then 3, then 4. He and Cleopatra sail up the Nile together on the royal barge, a floating palace accompanied by 400 ships. You travel with them, standing at the rail of the barge as it passes temples older than Rome, older than Greece, older than memory. The Nile flows like liquid bronze, and the queen and the general stand at the prow like figures carved into the future. You watch Cleopatra show Caesar her kingdom, the pyramids at Giza, the temples at Luxor, the fertile black soil that feeds the world. She is not just showing him a country, she is showing him an argument for why Egypt must remain independent. By the time they return to Alexandria, Cleopatra is pregnant. She tells you first, before the physicians, before Caesar, before the court. She places your hand on her belly and says, "Egypt and Rome," as if naming a new continent. Caesar must return to Rome. There are civil wars to finish, a republic to transform, a destiny that waits for him on the Ides of March, though no one knows that yet. He leaves behind a pregnant queen and a kingdom he didn't conquer, but couldn't resist. You watch his ship sail out of the great harbor from the palace balcony, Cleopatra standing beside you, her hand on her swelling belly, her face unreadable. The Pharos lighthouse flames behind the departing fleet like a golden farewell. The child is born in June, a boy, Ptolemy XV Caesar, called Caesarion, Little Caesar. He has his father's nose and his mother's eyes, and the first time you hold him, his tiny fingers wrap around yours like a declaration. Cleopatra sends word to Rome, and Caesar acknowledges the child, though he cannot make him his legal heir under Roman law. The politics of paternity are as complicated as everything else in this world of empires. You continue your duties, bathing the queen, dressing her, braiding her hair, but now you also help with the prince. You sing him Egyptian lullabies, and wonder what kind of world this half-Roman, half-Egyptian miracle will inherit. Cleopatra rules with a confidence that has been sharpened by survival. She reforms the currency, manages the grain supply, strengthens ties with Rome while maintaining Egyptian independence. She is not just a queen, she is a sovereign. 2 years after the carpet, Cleopatra travels to Rome itself, a Ptolemaic queen walking on Roman cobblestones, scandalizing the Senate, enchanting the people, and living in Caesar's villa across the Tiber. You go with her, seeing Rome for the first time. The city is magnificent and terrifying, all marble ambition and military swagger, so different from Alexandria's cultured elegance. You walk behind Cleopatra through Roman streets and feel the stares of a civilization that cannot decide if it wants to worship or destroy the woman in front of you. Then March 15th, 44 BC, the Ides and Caesar is assassinated on the floor of the Senate, stabbed 23 times by men he trusted. The news reaches Cleopatra's villa like a thunderbolt, and for the first time in all your years of service, you see the queen falter. She grips the arm of her chair so hard, her knuckles turn white, and you see something crack behind those painted eyes. Not just grief, but the annihilation of a carefully constructed future. Everything she built in that room with the carpet has just been unmade. You flee Rome within days, back to Alexandria, back to Egypt, back to the only throne she can control. Cleopatra holds Caesarion on the ship's deck as Italy disappears behind you, and she whispers to him in Egyptian things you cannot hear. Standing at the rail, watching the Mediterranean stretch between two worlds, you understand for the first time what your queen has always known. That power is not a possession but a performance, one that never ends, one that demands everything you have and then takes more. You will serve her for 20 more years, through Mark Antony, through Actium, through the Asp. But that is another story. For now, the ship carries you home to Alexandria, and in your pocket is a golden hairpin that fell from the queen's braid the night she tumbled from a carpet and changed the world.